What is up, Warrior Warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today I've got a beginner planche routine for you. This is the sort of thing that's designed to introduce people to starting out their planche journey. I'm not saying this is going to get you the planche, because the planche is a long process. Trust me, been working at this one for a while. You've always got to start somewhere on this road, and hopefully this one will help you out. So let's jump straight into it. I want to start by mentioning a couple of prerequisites and the intention of this routine, because the why is ultimately probably more important than the what in this particular instance. First of all is that this routine would be kind of what you consider a specialization phase of training. This is a focused phase of training specifically at developing the skills for the goals that we want to achieve. It is therefore built on a good base of general conditioning. It's not just something that if you wanted to start doing bodyweight training, you would start here. In fact, I would recommend really you have some reasonable amount of training under your belt and you're really able to do kind of maybe 8-10 dips, some pike push-ups and pull-ups. You have just like a general base level of conditioning before starting to train this sort of routine, because ultimately the progress won't be very good unless you have that base. The wider and more broad and more capable you are with kind of general basic movements, the easier you're going to find understanding and learning how to do the more advanced one. Trust me, I've wasted plenty of my time on this one. So we're going to start off with a couple of warm-up drills just to get things started. First of all, we're going to look at the wrists, because the wrists get put under quite a bit of load when it comes to planche training. We're going to need that maximum amount of wrist extension so we can get forward and lean forward in the planche. So we're going to warm things up using a first knuckle push-up. This movement involves doing a push-up, a hinging from just the first knuckle, keeping otherwise the rest of the body locked in place. We're going to start working with this one initially with our shoulders just behind the hand line. And then as we go through the reps, we're going to slowly move and shift our shoulders further forward. So each time we do a rep, we're going to be demanding a little bit more wrist extension on our behalf. You're going to do about 10 to 12 reps here, nice, slow and controlled. And over that 10 to 12 reps, you want to go from a nice comfortable level of wrist extension pretty much close to your max by the end of it. The second warm-up drill is a Serratus Rock. Now this is similar to a Serratus wall slide, but it is done in a range of motion that's more specific to the planche. This drill is just to reiterate the importance of the shoulder position in planche, which is going to be, we want a depressed shoulder blade, so we want to think about pulling our shoulders as far away from our ears as we can, so nice and down. And we also want to think about adding a slight element of protraction. We don't want excessive protraction, in which is basically caused by spinal flexion. We just want some protraction of the shoulder blades where they keep wrapped around the body. For beginners and also to some athletes in general, you're going to notice winging here, and this is something that we want to try and prevent, because ultimately it will make our planche a bit weaker. But as I said, for some instances, this is just kind of down to people's shoulder anatomy, and there's nothing wrong with it in the long term. You can work around it. So starting in a forearm plank, we're going to think about locking in that shoulder position. And then we're going to move backwards and forwards, focusing on just hinging at the shoulder. The entire time, the most important thing is to imagine those shoulder blades wrapping around the rib cage and maintaining good traction and oppression. This one is all about feeling and understanding what the right position is. Sometimes very useful just to film yourself doing this, watch your back, and then try and figure it out. We're going to do, again, 10 to 12 rocks with nice, slow and controlled throughout. No tempo here, just as you feel is useful for you. Right, so a couple of sets of those warm-up drills is probably more than enough. I'd recommend chucking in some push-ups with a little bit of general movement as well, just to get the body warm, and then we can jump into the main portion of the workout. The main drill we're going to be focusing on today is something called a pike pull-through. The pike pull-through is really about understanding the basics of the press to planche, and this is moving from that support position and then pulling the hips back and trying to get them as high as possible into what will become a tuck planche position. Understanding that shoulder position that we did in the initial drill, those shoulder rocks, is what becomes important here, because we want to think about setting it from the beginning. So we start in that supported L-sit position. We focus on maximally depressing and a slight element of protraction. You then want to imagine that somebody is going to pull your hips backwards, you're going to leave your shoulders forward, and then you're just going to try and lift your hips as high as they can. Now ultimately the amount of lift is going to be determined by how high the hands are. The easier progressions are actually when the hands are lower down to the ground, because it's going to slightly reduce the range of motion but allow us to focus more on getting good shoulder position. As we raise the hands up, it allows for more movement and allows us to get closer to that tuck planche position, but we're still having the legs on the floor to assist us throughout the movement. If you are particularly tight in the hamstrings and notice that this is actually the limiting factor for you trying to push, it's just you're fighting against those hamstrings being tight. You can slightly bend the legs here, and that will then allow you to get a little bit more of a range of motion and not be so restricted by your flexibility. But if you are restricted by your flexibility, probably worth working on that one as well. And once you get to that highest point, you're going to focus on feeling that shoulder position as we were with those Serratus Rocks. Still depressed, still protracted, and then adding that element of leaning forward. You're going to hold this top position for 3 seconds, maximally pushing as hard away from the ground as you can, and also slightly trying to squeeze the hands towards each other. We're going to do this one for 3 to 5 repetitions. Now this one, the goal isn't necessarily to reach absolute failure, but what you will notice is the height in which you can lift the hips will slowly decrease over those 3 to 5 reps. The point is about thinking about that maximum effort contraction in the top position during these reps. Eventually, as you get stronger, you will be able to transition to doing this exercise without the feet assisted. So the pike pull through is a feet assisted version of the L-sit to tuck planche, which is exactly the same movement. It's going to work the same way, but it just requires more strength to get there. So that's our main exercise. Now, ideally, this probably would be paired with a pulling exercise. Usually I like to split things into upper and lower splits, whereas this workout is only a pushing workout. If you wanted to add an exercise here, I recommend chucking a similar movement in the front lever. Actually, if you want a beginner front lever routine, let me know in the comment section down below and I will see if I can make this happen. And that would be the routines that you can pair with this one. Next up, we move to the B series of this routine, and we're going to do a little bit of bent arm planche work. And that's going to be in the form of the planche push up. Now the planche push up is a massively undervalued drill. Even the regular planche push up drill is one of those ones that is invaluable regardless of what end of the spectrum you're at. Unless you can rep like 10 plus tuck planche push ups or straddle planche push ups because you're an absolute beast, the planche push-up is going to be a pretty useful drill for you. It just allows us to get much more volume in that lean forward position and also train the muscular system, the bent arm system, to get better recruitment, better conditioning to build that base for the planche. We're going to perform this one for 6 to 8 repetitions with a nice slow negative. When doing this drill, there's a few things to consider. Number one is our top position is crucial and we need to think about our shoulder position. The shoulder position should be the same as it was before, that depression, that protraction, nice external rotation, arms locked in, squeezing inwards, really solid top position with a good forward lean. As we lower down, you're going to try and lean as far forward as you can, but still control the movement over that 3 or 4 seconds. And then you're going to push back up, trying to maintain as much lean as you can, but can still perform the reps. Now, over these 6 to 8 repetitions, you're going to notice the amount of lean you can do is going to decrease over time. Now, one way you can do this is to try and keep things constant. You can use a wall, such as I think Dan Vadnal has suggested many times in his videos, and you try to lean the head against that wall to use your point of reference. If this one is hard for you, you're just going to lean a little bit less. If this one is easy for you, you're going to lean a little bit further forward. Nice and simple. Doesn't need to be complicated. If you're going to pair this one with a pulling exercise, it would make sense to pair it with some form of body rate row variation, or even a front lever row if you're particularly strong, for the same reps and sets. Finally, we move on to the C exercise, and that is going to be a little bit of rotator cuff / planche conditioning just to finish up. Now this one we're going to perform today is a planched lean to downward dog press. So this one is actually training the range of motion that we haven't used yet. We've trained the bottom half of the planche position. This is going to train the range of motion from the planche to that overhead position, something that we might cover in a planche press, for example. Now this one here we're going to do for higher reps. Probably think 10 to 15 reps is a good amount for this exercise. We're going to start off with a planche lean. So think again, shoulder position, depressed, protracted, lean forward as far as feels hard. From here, you're going to imagine that you're going to try and slide the floor away from you, and you're going to press the arms overhead into an elevated position where we're going to try and shrug our shoulders up towards our ears. You're then just going to try and lower under control, but as you lower, try to think about constantly trying to push the floor far away from your body. This will help maintain a little bit more of that protraction and that good shoulder position. Again, if you find that your hamstrings are going to limit your ability to get into a nice open downward dog position, it's absolutely fine to slightly bend the legs here and really just focus on the shoulder blades. We want to feel that most of the weight is going to be in the hands during this movement, and we're going to take away much of the weight from our feet. Ultimately, you're just going to transition back and forth under this one with a reasonable amount of control. Think about a 2-second negative, a couple of second pause in that planche lean position, and a nice strong press, but controlled press back up to that starting position. Again, this exercise can be paired with a pulling exercise. With this one, really, you can kind of go wild. It'd be kind of some sort of accessory exercise for the front lever, so maybe some scapular pull-ups, or maybe some rear delt flies, and then also bicep curls if you want to improve your pulling strength. But that is basically the workout, really. It's not particularly complicated, it's not particularly advanced, but it definitely does the job. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, this is a specialization phase. This is just about the planche. If you haven't got much training experience and you go to do this program or you go to do this routine consistently, you're probably not going to see great progress towards your planche position. All of these high level skills like planche, front lever, handstand push up, one arm chin up, they are built on a solid foundation, a solid base. And that's something that took me several years of training to actually figure out why I wasn't making the progress that I wanted to make towards these movements. It's because I hadn't spent the time on just getting the broadest base with the basics, the pull-ups, dips, pike push-ups, rows, all of that sort of stuff. Because at the end of the day, anyone who is an advanced trainee has just mastered the basics. That's the only difference. Again, if you have any questions about this routine or anything to do with planche training, maybe leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I will try to do some more videos in the future covering certain aspects of this video in more detail, because there's a lot you can go into. I could do a whole video on just the shoulder position of the planche and many other factors, but I've tried to kind of communicate a wide variety in this video. If you did find this video useful, if you're going to give the routine a go, just want to support the channel, you can always hit that thumbs up button. I would highly appreciate it. Right next to it is also the subscribe button if you want to join the Bodyweight Warrior tribe. But that has basically been it for this week, guys. I'll catch you in the next episode. Have a strong week and peace.